All right, what is up, everybody? Clayton Sayfie with EJ Holland here. We're both from the Wolverine.com here on Wolverine TV. Remember to hit up our promo code over at the Wolverine.com, Blue 60 for 60 days free. This episode, we're talking about who could be the next 2022 Michigan commit. So, Michigan landed Tyler Martin, kid out of the Boston area, last week, four-star linebacker, Rivals 250 prospect. But who could be next? Michigan fans always looking for what's next. So, EJ, we compiled the list here, and we're going to break these guys down. We're going to have you break down first Josh Burnham, four-star inside linebacker out of Traverse City Central, who is kind of one of those hot names here in 2022 that everybody wants to focus on here as the cycle starts to ramp up. But tell us a little bit about Josh Burnham. I know you went and saw him while you were on vacation up in Traverse City, so you took some time to go see him. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm trying to see Josh Burnham again this week, but obviously a lot of restrictions. It's week one in Michigan, so we'll see if I can see him again. But when I went out this summer to Traverse City, I mean, obviously fun time out there, and it was cool getting to hang out with him one on one and get his thoughts on Michigan. I mean, his whole family grew up Michigan fans. He grew up watching Michigan. And so I think Michigan's definitely on the inside track in that recruitment. Josh said if they had a season that he wanted to make an early decision. So it looks like there is a season. So potentially an early decision coming from Josh. And I think all signs point to Michigan early on. At the same time, Ohio State's been recruiting him extremely hard. Ryan Day has had a couple of video chats with him here recently. So I think Ohio State's a big threat. Wisconsin is another big threat. I know that I actually don't know if this is legal or not, but I know JJ Watt was getting on the phone with him at some point. So there you go. But yeah, I know he really wants to stay closer to home. Um, and I know Michigan has a lot of ties there. His coach, Eric Sugars, spoke very highly of Jim Harbaugh and the coaching staff at Michigan as well. If I had to make a pick right now, it would definitely be Michigan for Josh. And like I said, he could be a guy that makes an early decision, and definitely not a guy that likes social media, doesn't really talk a whole lot, kind of keeps to himself. He's out in Traverse City, so people I feel like forget about him. But I mean, he's a Rivals 250 prospect, and in my opinion, he is the number two overall player in Michigan. That's where I would have him graded right behind the great Will Johnson, who, yes, he won't be on this list, but Michigan's still in a very good spot for Will Johnson as well. But I think in state, those are the big two, in my opinion. They already have Alex Van Sumeren committed, but I would have Josh as a top 100 player along with Will. So if Michigan can get him early, that would be huge for the class.
Yeah, everybody probably just got excited when you mentioned Will Johnson there. So Michigan in a good spot there. But like you said, not on the list. Next would be Dylan Tatum, another Rivals 250 guy, four-star prospect, West Bloomfield. Teammates with Donovan Edwards, who I'll be going and seeing them this weekend here for their opener. So we'll have some stuff from that. But, just on the edge there, the Rivals 250 prospect, but a really good-looking prospect for sure. Your thoughts on him? He seems to be high on Michigan as well. I know Notre Dame talking to him, but your thoughts on Dylan Tatum, Michigan's chances with him, and maybe he could be one of these guys that commits in the next, month, 2 months, possibly for Michigan here in the early side of this class.
Yeah, so Dylan is pictured right behind me for those that don't know. I feel like people are still getting familiar with the 2022 recruits, so that's Dylan. But anyway, he's I would say Rivals has him graded about right as kind of that borderline top 250 guy, but he's easily a prospect that could boom in the rankings. I felt like he's one that really needed a junior season. Depending on how he does this year, again, he could really skyrocket in the rankings. He's a really versatile prospect. Michigan likes him both as a running back and as a corner. He's actually had conversations with both Jay Harbaugh and Michael Zordich. So he's, again, a really interesting athlete. I know he's very high on Michigan. I feel like every time I see him, he's rocking either Michigan gloves or Michigan cleats or something. Again, West Bloomfield has a ton of ties. His head coach is Ron Bellamy, former Wolverine. He saw former teammates Cornell Wheeler and Makari Page sign with Michigan last cycle. Obviously, a major player for Donovan Edwards, who he looks up to as kind of a big brother type. So I think landing Donovan would go a long way with landing Dylan. But either way, Michigan's had a lot of success at West Bloomfield recently, and Dylan's definitely a top of the board guy early on. And so I really like where the Wolverines stand, and he's visited on multiple occasions already.
Yeah, definitely. Next on the list here, Marlon Klein, a three-star tight end, listed as a wide receiver, so maybe, kind of an athlete there. But I know I'm going to butcher this, but Raboon Gap, Georgia. You can correct me if you know the actual pronunciation there. But a kid out of the South that Michigan, seems to be high up there for on both their board and his list. So your thoughts on him and why he could possibly be one of the next couple guys here for Michigan in 2022.
Yeah, Marlon's a guy that we need to talk a lot more about. I feel like he's just a prospect that nobody really knows. He's from the South. He's a three-star kid, but he's not a true Southern kid. He's actually originally from Europe. So it's not like, oh man, he's going to go to a school in the South. He's very open to high academic schools. He actually did a self-guided tour of Michigan last weekend, I believe, or it was very recent that he did a self-guided tour, made a trip up to Ann Arbor. I know he really loved his time on campus. Ramore is doing a good job of really recruiting him, and they're in contact on a weekly basis. And I know that Marlon is a tier one tight end prospect for next cycle. And with Michigan having taken only one tight end in each of these last cycles, so obviously, in 2020 they only had one. In 2021 they only have one with Lewis Hansen. I think they're going to potentially take two in 2022. It's not necessarily a strong year for tight end, but with the numbers working out the way they're working out, I think two is a very high possibility. And so landing a guy like Marlon early would definitely be a boost for the class in that position.
All right, next up on the list would be Joe Strickland, defensive lineman out of the Indianapolis area, Rivals 250 prospect here in 2022. Tell us a little bit about him. I know you went and saw him as well, so your thoughts on him as a prospect, and why Michigan is high up on his list.
Yeah, so Joe, I got a chance to see a few weeks ago. He is a very interesting looking defensive lineman that could either be an anchor or a three tech. He's very much built like TJ Guy in this class. He's very athletic. He's very long. He has a good build in both his upper and lower halves. He's still a little raw from a technical standpoint, but he has all the traits to be a very high major prospect. He's already a top 250 player, and another prospect that I think could skyrocket in the rankings after seeing him go through practice in a live setting. So I know Michigan's very high up on his list early on. He has weekly calls with defensive line coach Sean Nua. On top of that, he's an extremely smart kid. He goes to the top private school for academics in Indianapolis. And he has a 3.7 GPA and wants to, I believe, be a chemical engineer or mechanical engineer, some type of engineer. I don't know, too smart for me. So
Yeah, me too.
I feel like Michigan would be a good overall fit. It's interesting that the in-state school Notre Dame has not offered him yet. So I think they're getting more and more behind in that recruitment. If there is a huge threat, I think it would be Notre Dame. But since Notre Dame hasn't offered, I think the door is wide open for Michigan to take full control of this recruitment. So another kid that not a lot of people are talking about, but again, I saw him on the road a few weeks ago, and I really, really like where Michigan stands.
Yeah, and the last guy on this list here is a guy that a lot of people do talk about, Tyler Morris, wide receiver there, out of the Chicago area, former teammates with J.J. McCarthy, the number 70 player in 2022. One of your best friends, it seems like. I feel like you're out seeing him all the time. So you obviously are close to him, and then, of course, J.J. McCarthy, and so you know quite a bit about Tyler's recruitment, but maybe a kid who would make this list and say, oh, okay, he could be a commit soon, or at some point, a top contender would be Michigan in his recruitment. So tell us a little bit about Tyler Morris here.
Yeah, Tyler's, like you said, I see him all the time. I just saw him twice in the last week. So, it's good building a relationship with Tyler. Tyler's pretty quiet and reserved. He's kind of to himself. I think the three schools really sticking out in his recruitment right now are Michigan, Penn State, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame was considered a really heavy favorite for him, and then contact dropped off. It's recently picked back up, but I think that little gap hurt the Irish. I know Penn State's a school he really, really wants to see. But overall, he really likes Michigan. He talks to Josh Gaddis all the time. JJ McCarthy's constantly in his ear, and I think that connection will go a long way. Obviously, JJ was his teammate at Nazareth Academy last year before heading out to IMG. And so I think Michigan makes a lot of sense for Tyler. He visited right before the dead period and wants to get back to Michigan pretty soon. And I think landing a guy like Tyler would be huge for the class, not necessarily because he would be a vocal recruiter. Like I said, he's more of a quiet kid, but he commands a lot of respect on the recruiting trail. I think a lot of kids know who Tyler Morris is, and Tyler's like a silent assassin. Like he doesn't talk at all on the field either. Like he's not a trash talking guy or anything. He just goes out and makes plays, and uh, you know, kids will line up literally in like these events that I've seen in the last few weeks. Like kids will line up and they'll be like, "Oh, I want to take on Tyler Morris," and they'll like talk trash to him, and he just kind of smiles and then just routes them up. So he's a guy that commands a lot of respect with his play on the field, and I think landing Tyler would definitely help with fellow Chicago top 100 kid Caleb Brown. And I think Michigan's in a good spot for Caleb too, but I know Caleb really likes some other programs like Ohio State, which recently got involved there. But overall, I would say Michigan might be in a slightly better spot with Tyler than Caleb, but definitely high up there for both. And I think JJ's a little closer to Tyler than he is to Caleb, though JJ played club 7-on-7 with Caleb and is constantly in his ear as well. But I think Tyler would be maybe the safer pick of the two to land at Michigan at this time. But yeah, overall, I mean, Chicago home to three top 100 players with Tyler Morris, Caleb Brown, and Sebastian Cheeks, who's not on this list, but easily could have been on it as well. Michigan major players for that trio.
Yeah, definitely. So our list is rounded out with Josh Burnham, Dylan Tatum, Joe Strickland, Marlon Klein, and of course your boy there, Tyler Martin. So that's the list of the five guys. What's that?
Tyler Morris. Martin's
Or
already
Tyler
committed.
Morris. I
We're
got
gonna
Tyler
get
Martin.
confused with all the Tylers.
I got Tyler Martin burned into my brain here for the newest commit, but yeah, who's next? Tyler Martin is on that list, so good correction there. Blue 60s our promo code over at the Wolverine.com, and we will see everybody next time.